February 1904, Baltimore. A fire that started in a dry goods building downtown burned for more than 30 hours and took roughly 80 city blocks with it. And out on the edges of it, in rows of wooden houses, families were waking up to orange light on the ceiling. In one of those houses, the stairs were already useless. What saved them was a small square panel cut into the hall ceiling years before by a grandfather everyone in the family quietly considered paranoid. A hatch. $2 of framing and flashing. It's number 11 on this list. Number 4 kept an entire generation of American families digging in their own backyards. And number 1 has saved more lives on this continent than any smoke alarm ever manufactured. 25 features built into ordinary homes on purpose, then quietly erased. Why did we stop building them? Before we start the countdown, do me one small favor. Hit subscribe. This channel digs through building codes, recall notices, old catalogs, and fire marshal reports so you don't have to. And the 25 features coming up get stranger, older, and more useful the closer we get to number 1. Number 25. The coal chute. If your house was built between roughly 1880 and the 1940s, walk around the outside of it and look low, right where the foundation meets the dirt. A lot of houses still carry a small cast iron door there, maybe 14 inches square, sometimes painted over 11 times, sometimes bricked shut so neatly you'd never notice. Most people assume it was purely a delivery slot, and it was. Coal came by wagon, then by truck, a ton at a time, and the driver ran a metal chute from the curb into that little door so the load slid straight into a bin in the cellar without a single boot crossing the parlor rug. Here's the part that's been forgotten. That chute was cut on an angle a person could slide down, and more importantly, a person could climb up. It opened from the inside. It latched from the inside. It cost the builder almost nothing, $1 or so of cast iron in 1910, and it gave the cellar an opening to daylight that wasn't the stairs. Look at how these were actually placed, and the intent gets clearer. The door sat high on the cellar wall but low on the outside wall, because the ground outside was higher than the cellar floor. That means from the yard it was a knee-high hole, and from the basement it was a chest-high hole with a coal bin built right under it. And a coal bin is a wooden box you can stand on. Builders framed those bins out of rough plank, 4 or 5 feet tall, right beneath the opening. Nobody wrote in a catalog that this was a way out. It just was one, the way a low branch is a way up a tree. Ask anyone who grew up shoveling anthracite. They'll tell you about the sound of a load coming in, the black dust that got into everything, the way you could hear a neighbor's delivery 2 houses down. They'll tell you the delivery man counted in bushel baskets or ran a canvas sleeve off the truck bed, and that the whole street knew whose furnace was hungry that week. A household burning a stove and a furnace through a northern winter might go through several tons a year, which means that door was opened again and again every season for decades. It never got a chance to seize shut. Use is its own maintenance. When oil burners and then gas took over in the 50s, contractors bricked these over by the thousands. Nobody argued. Nobody thought to keep the second door. Number 24. The milk chute. Beside the kitchen door set into the wall, there was often a little insulated cabinet with 2 doors, one facing the porch and one facing the kitchen. The delivery man opened the outside door, set in the bottles, closed it. Inside, your mother opened the other door and took the milk in without unlocking anything. Think about what that actually is. It's a controlled opening. It's a way for the inside of the house to touch the outside world without the house being open. Understand how ordinary this was. Home delivery of milk in glass bottles was the default across American cities and towns from the late 1800s onward, and it survived long enough that builders in the 20s and 30s drew the chute right into the plans, lined with tin or zinc, sometimes with a felt-packed cavity to keep cream from freezing on the porch overnight. Some had a little slot for the token, or the paper ticket that told the driver how many quarts you wanted. That is a house designed with the assumption that strangers will come to it daily, and that this is fine, provided the opening is small, controlled, and closes behind them. Kids found the other uses immediately because kids always do. A small child locked out could sometimes wriggle through. A note could go out. A hand could reach through and work a latch. There are still houses across the Midwest and the Northeast where you'll find one behind a kitchen cabinet, the little chrome handle still turning. When home delivery collapsed in the 60s, most were sealed, insulated over, drywalled shut. 30 years of a small, honest door between a family and its street, gone in a weekend of remodeling. Number 23. The laundry chute. A narrow shaft, sheet metal or plaster, running from a hallway door on the top floor straight down to the basement. Its official purpose was obvious. Nobody wanted to carry wet sheets down 2 flights, and wet sheets are heavier than people remember because before spin cycles the water stayed in the cloth. But in a tall, narrow house, where the stairwell was the only route between floors, that shaft was a vertical line from the top of the house to the bottom that fire and smoke had not necessarily filled yet. More than one child went down one with a pile of laundry waiting at the bottom, sometimes as a game, occasionally not as a game at all. Fathers checked the drop. You'd hear about a man tossing a sack of flour down first to see how it landed. The whole thing might have cost $3 of galvanized metal in 1920. Now here's the strange part. Modern codes killed the laundry chute for a completely legitimate reason. An unprotected vertical shaft connecting floors is a chimney. It pulls smoke and flame upward fast, which is exactly what you don't want. The fire service is right about that, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. The fix was never mysterious either. Line the shaft, give it a self-closing door with a fire rating, terminate it in a room that isn't full of lint and a gas dryer. Institutions still do exactly that. Hospitals and hotels run laundry chutes to this day under those rules. Houses just quit. But notice the shape of the trade. We removed the shaft because it could spread a fire, and we replaced it with nothing. No alternate path, no second route, just a sealed floor and a single staircase. That's the pattern you're going to see over and over in the next 30 minutes. Something gets removed for a good reason, and the function it quietly performed never gets replaced. Millions of people buy old houses today, find these 3 features, and treat them as charming junk to be sealed. They were the cheapest redundancy ever built into an American home. Number 22. The dumbwaiter. Before passenger elevators reached ordinary buildings, better row houses and brownstones had a small platform on ropes running up a shaft inside the wall, hand-cranked, built to move a tray of food from the basement kitchen to the dining room. A rope and pulley system installed around 1900 might run $15, real money then, which is exactly why it signaled status. But the shaft is the point. A shaft is a route. A small person could ride it, and in a house where the ground floor was not somewhere you wanted to be, a family knew there was a way between floors that didn't touch the main stair. When central heating and modern kitchens made them pointless, builders framed right over the openings. People renovating brownstones in Brooklyn and Philadelphia still cut into a wall and find a wooden box hanging on frayed rope, motionless for 80 years. Number 21. The ice delivery door. The icebox sat in the kitchen and the iceman brought a block, often 50 pounds, on his shoulder with tongs. In a lot of houses, there was a hinged, insulated hatch in the exterior wall behind the icebox so he could load it from outside. A woman alone in the house took her delivery without unlocking a door, and that hatch was wide enough to hand a child through to a neighbor. Refrigerators killed the trade in the 30s and 40s, and the hatches got bricked shut along with the idea that a house should have many small openings instead of one big one. Number 20. Transom windows. That little horizontal pane on a hinge above interior doors in old buildings. People call it decorative. It was ventilation in a world with no air conditioning, and it was something else too. When a door was locked from the wrong side, jammed by heat, warped, or held shut, the transom was a way through, a way to get air, a way to pass a child over. Pennies of glass and a brass hinge in 1915. Hollow core doors and central air ended them after the Second World War. Now number 19, and this is where the modern rule book actually proves the old-timers right. The basement egress window. Down in the cellar, one window sits lower and wider than the rest, in a curved corrugated steel well dug into the earth outside, sometimes with a step molded into it. Most people assume it's for light. It's an exit. Here's the legal part, and it matters. Under the International Residential Code, Section R310, every basement and every sleeping room below grade in a home built to that code must have an emergency escape and rescue opening. The numbers are specific. A minimum net clear opening of 5.7 square feet for below grade openings, minimum clear height of 24 inches, minimum clear width of 20 inches, and a sill no higher than 44 inches above the floor. If the window opens into a window well, the well needs a minimum of 9 square feet of area with a minimum 36-inch projection and width, and if it's deeper than 44 inches, it needs a permanently affixed ladder or steps. That's not folklore. That's the code, adopted in some form by most of the United States. Read that again and understand what it means. Modern building law now requires, in writing with measurements, the exact thing your great-grandfather built by instinct because he'd seen a house burn. Every room where a person sleeps needs a second way out. That principle wasn't invented by a committee. It was learned the hard way and eventually written down. A corrugated steel window well cost a builder around $4 in 1940. And here's the loophole you need to know about, because it's the kind of thing that catches families every single year. The code applies to new construction and to work that requires a permit. It does not retroactively apply to the finished basement bedroom somebody's uncle put together over a long weekend in 1988 without pulling a permit. There are millions of below-grade bedrooms in this country where the only way out is a staircase because the room was never inspected and legally never existed. The window is a small hopper unit 12 inches tall. Nobody is coming to check. If you rent, if you bought a house with a finished basement, if your teenager sleeps down there, go measure the opening this week. 20 by 24 inches minimum clear, 5.7 square feet net. A basement bedroom with one exit is not a bedroom. It's a room with a lid on it. Number 18. The servant's back staircase. In larger homes, a second narrow stair ran from the kitchen up to the bedrooms, hidden behind walls, plain treads, no carpet, no polish. It existed for social reasons, so staff moved unseen. But the effect was structural. 2 staircases meant one blocked stair didn't end the story. Look at how they were built and you'll notice something else. The back stair almost always sat at the opposite end of the house from the front stair, and it was enclosed, boxed in by walls with a door top and bottom. That is, by accident of etiquette, a protected stairway remote from the main one, which is precisely what a modern code writer would draw for a building of that size. It might have added $40 to construction in 1910, which was serious money, and when domestic service faded from middle-class life and open plans became fashionable, the second stair was the first thing cut. Square footage won. The irony is that the same decades that removed the back stair also removed the doors at the bottom of the front stair, so the one remaining route became an open shaft into the bedrooms. Number 17. Bulkhead cellar doors. Those slanted double doors leaning against the side of the house, opening down into the basement from the yard. Wood, later steel, maybe $8 to build in 1935. Farmers used them to haul in the harvest, and also the coffin-sized things that never fit a stairway. Barrels, a hog carcass in November, the furnace itself when it finally died. What they also did was give the cellar an exit that never passed through the house at all. Go down the inside stairs, up the bulkhead, out into the backyard, and you've bypassed the front door entirely. Note the direction of the hinges, too. Those doors swing up and outward, which means snow, debris, or a collapsed porch above doesn't necessarily trap them, and a person can shove one open with a shoulder and a back rather than a hand on a knob. When suburban basements became rec rooms with paneling and a bar, builders stopped installing them and sealed the cellar behind a single interior stair. Number 16. The sleeping porch. Screened, usually off the second floor, sitting over the lower roof. Families slept out there through hot months before air conditioning, and it spread across the country partly on medical advice. In the early 1900s, fresh air therapy was mainstream treatment for tuberculosis. The sanatorium movement built entire buildings around open-air sleeping, and the idea came home with people. You can find sleeping porches drawn straight into the mail-order house plans of the period, Sears among them, and into the bungalow pattern books that sold by the hundreds of thousands. Screening a porch ran about $20 in 1925, and every one of those porches was a low, reachable platform, over a roof you could walk down, with a door onto it from a bedroom and a railing you could get a leg over. Half the household was already sleeping outside the building envelope on the hottest nights of the year, which is a curious thing to think about now. Window units and central air came. We shut the windows, and the porches were glassed in or torn off, usually to add closet space. Number 15. The Widow's Walk. That railed platform on top of coastal houses, named for wives watching for ships that never came back, though historians will tell you the romantic name came later than the feature itself. The functional truth is that it had a hatch opening onto the roof. Many sat directly over the chimney stack, and the practical explanation you'll hear from preservationists is that they gave access to the chimney and to a bucket of sand kept at the top of the stairs for chimney fires, which were the ordinary domestic emergency of the age. In 1880, that ironwork might cost $50. It gave the highest point of the house a door, a place to be seen from, to signal from, to wait above the smoke. Now let me put these in the history they belong to, because this is not nostalgia. This is a documented sequence of American disasters that rewrote the rules. December 30, 1903. The Iroquois Theater in Chicago, advertised as fireproof, burned during a matinee. At least 602 people died. The building had been open barely 5 weeks. Investigators found exits concealed behind curtains, doors that opened inward, and iron bascule locks unfamiliar to a panicking crowd. The asbestos curtain that was supposed to drop between stage and audience snagged. Fire escape doors on the upper levels opened onto platforms with no stairs finished. What came out of it, across American cities, were ordinances on outward swinging doors, marked and lit exits, panic hardware. The idea that an exit you cannot find or cannot operate is not an exit. March 25, 1911. The Triangle Shirtwaist factory fire in New York City. 146 workers died, most of them young immigrant women, on the 8th, 9th, and 10th floors of a building the city considered modern. A stairwell door was locked. The fire escape twisted and collapsed under the weight of people on it, and ladders reached only to the 6th floor. The response was the New York State Factory Investigating Commission, chaired and practiced by Robert F. Wagner and Alfred E. Smith, with Francis Perkins among its investigators. Between 1911 and 1914, New York passed dozens of new laws on fire drills, sprinklers, exit doors that must remain unlocked and swing outward. Frances Perkins later became the first woman to serve in a United States cabinet, and she said directly that the New Deal began that afternoon on Washington Place. November 28, 1942. The Cocoanut Grove nightclub in Boston packed far past capacity on a football weekend. 492 people died. A revolving door at the main entrance jammed with bodies. Other exits were locked, hidden behind drapery, or opened inward. Massachusetts and then the national codes moved against revolving doors without flanking swing doors, against flammable decorations, toward emergency lighting. The burn treatment that came out of the Boston hospitals that night changed medicine as well, but that's another story. See the through line? Every rule you now live under was purchased at a price, and every one of them says the same thing the coal chute and the bulkhead door said. One way out is not a way out. And notice the timing. The Iroquois burned in 1903, Triangle in 1911. Those are exactly the years the sleeping porch and the roof hatch in the back stair were standard equipment. The families building hatches into their roofs in 1900 weren't eccentrics. They were reading the same newspapers. Number 14. The detached summer kitchen. On farms, a second small kitchen stood apart from the house, used in hot weather with its own stove and its own door. Sometimes it was joined by a covered breezeway, a few steps of open air with a roof, and that gap had a name in some regions. The whistle walk, the dog trot, the connector. The separation was the whole point. Wood stove kitchens caught fire constantly, because you were feeding an open firebox with split wood in a room full of grease and flour and dry cloth. And if the summer kitchen burned, the family sleeping in the main house had a yard's worth of air between them and it. It also kept the canning heat and the smoke out of the bedrooms in August, which is why it survived as long as it did. Maybe $30 in lumber in 1900. Gas and electric ranges made cooking safe enough to bring back under the same roof as the beds, and we told ourselves that was fine. Cooking is still the leading cause of home fires in this country, for what it's worth. We just moved the stove closer. Here's the first pattern break, and it's where this stops being about architecture. Every feature on this list shares one belief. The people who built them assumed the world could turn on you fast. Fire in the night. A storm that takes the roof. Someone at the door who shouldn't be there. So they built quietly for that in the walls, in the cellar, in the roof, and then they went about their lives and never mentioned it. That is not fear. Fear is loud. This was readiness, which is calm and cheap and boring. And somewhere in the last 70 years, we decided a house needed to be comfortable rather than survivable. So let me give you the inspector's version. Not brand names, not products. Rules. Rule 1. Count exits per room, not per house. Stand in every room where a person sleeps and count the ways out that don't require another person's help. Door plus operable window that a real human body fits through. If the answer is 1, you found a problem and it costs nothing to know about it. This is not an exotic standard, by the way. Modern residential codes require an emergency escape and rescue opening in every sleeping room, with a minimum clear opening and a sill height a person can reach. Most old houses meet it by accident. Some don't meet it at all anymore, because of what got done to them later. Rule 2. Test, don't assume. Painted shut sashes are the single most common failure in old houses. Open every bedroom window all the way, right now this week. If it takes 2 hands and a shoulder, it doesn't count. A putty knife along the seam in 20 minutes fixes most of them. Check the storm window and the screen too, because a window that opens into a fixed aluminum storm panel is a window that doesn't open. Same with security bars. If the bars on a bedroom window don't have an interior quick release, they are a lock on your exit. Fire investigators have said that out loud repeatedly after finding people at barred windows. Rule 3. The weakest person sets the standard. Can the 8-year-old do it in the dark? Can grandma? An escape route that only works for a healthy adult is a route for a healthy adult. Do it once with the lights off and you'll learn more in 4 minutes than in 4 hours of reading. Rule 4. 2 meeting points, one outside, one known by name. The National Fire Protection Association's guidance on home escape planning is blunt about this. Make a plan, draw the floor plan, mark 2 ways out of every room, pick a meeting place in front of the home, and practice it twice a year at night with everyone. Their surveys have found that most households have never drilled it. That is the real gap, and it's free to close. Number 13. The root cellar. Dug into a hillside or under the house, thick earth walls storing potatoes, apples, onions, and jars through winter. Cool in summer, above freezing in winter, and utterly indifferent to what was happening above. Fire could not reach it. Earth doesn't burn, and 4 feet of soil is better insulation than anything you can buy. On the plains, families went down into it when the sky turned, and the outside entry versions with their own sloped door became, in plain speech, the storm cellar. It cost nothing but labor and it fed a household until spring. Refrigeration ended the need to store that way. Slab foundations ended the digging, and we filled in the one-room fire could never touch. Number 12. The well house. A small covered structure over the well out in the yard. A second building with a door, a water source, and often cool storage underneath. A stone trough with the crock of butter and the milk cans standing in running water. A farmhouse fire that meant somewhere to run that stood apart from the house and had water right there to soak blankets. And it was the assembly point without anyone calling it that, because it was already the place everybody in the family walked to several times a day. A few dollars of lumber in 1910. Indoor plumbing spread through rural America in the 40s and 50s, helped along by rural electrification and the pumps it made possible. The well was capped, and the little building came down. Number 11. The attic escape hatch, and this is the one from the top of the video. In the ceiling of an upstairs closet or hall, a small square panel. Above it, cut through the roof, a hinged hatch to the outside, flashed like a small dormer so it never leaked. It let a person climb out of a burning second floor onto the roof, above the smoke, where a ladder could reach them. That last part matters. Smoke and heat go up and collect at the ceiling, so the floor of an upstairs hall may still be breathable when the air at head height is not. And the roof is the one place in a burning house where a fire crew can see you from the street. Cautious builders installed them. Cautious grandfathers cut them in later, with a saw and a few dollars of framing and flashing, and got laughed at for it right up until the night the stairs filled with smoke. Go up into your own attic. Almost certainly there's insulation, dead space, a pull-down ladder rated for 200 pounds, and no way out at all. The old ones had a door in the roof, put there by people who understood that the top of a burning house needs an exit exactly as badly as the bottom does. Number 10. The coiled rope fire ladder. Not built into the house, but as much a part of the escape plan as any staircase. A wooden box under the bed in an upstairs room, holding a rope or chain ladder with iron hooks. You set the hooks over the window sill, threw the rest out, and went down hand over hand while the hallway burned behind the door. The better ones had wooden or steel standoffs on every rung, little arms that held the ladder off the siding, so your toes had somewhere to go, because a flat ladder against a wall is nearly unclimbable for a frightened person in the dark. Store-bought models ran around $3 in the mid-1920s and turned up in mail-order catalogs alongside the washboards. Parents drilled children on them, which is the part we've genuinely lost. The drill mattered more than the hardware. Which window, which direction the hooks face, who goes first, who goes last. As houses got shorter and the burden shifted to detection and suppression, the under-the-bed ladder disappeared. And detection matters enormously. Smoke alarms cut the risk of dying in a home fire roughly in half according to the NFPA. But an alarm tells you there's a fire. It does not put you on the ground. Number 9. The cast iron fire escape. In American cities, that black zigzag of iron on the outside of a building exists because of law, not generosity. New York's tenement legislation, and the 1901 Tenement House Act in particular, forced fireproof stairs, exits, windows in every room, and it did so after decades of people dying behind locked doors and jammed sashes. The earlier 1879 law had already pushed the airshaft and the window into the interior rooms of the dumbbell tenement, and it wasn't enough. For a while, everyone in the building knew exactly which window opened onto it. Children were shown before they could read. Look at old photographs of the Lower East Side in summer, and you'll see families sleeping out on that iron, mattresses and all, which meant the route was used nightly for months of the year, and nobody had to be told where it went. Then we let them rust, caged them behind window bars, filled them with planters and bicycles and air conditioners, and the drilled automatic knowledge of which window, which turn, faded out. The iron is still there on a million buildings. Iron alone was never the safety feature. It was iron plus a family that had rehearsed it. Number 8. The floor trap door. Under a rug in the hall or the pantry, a hinged section of floorboards opening down into a cellar or crawl space, usually with a plain ladder, built for access, used for everything. In houses with no interior cellar stair at all, this was the cellar stair. A person could drop through, cross the cellar, and come up out of the bulkhead doors in the backyard while someone was still at the front of the house. Cutting one cost a saw blade and a pair of hinges. Wall-to-wall carpet and new subfloor buried thousands of them, and the giveaway now is usually a seam in the boards that doesn't match the run, or a rectangle of nail heads where somebody screwed it down for good in 1968. Number 7. The hidden room. More common than people believe. A small windowless space framed between other rooms, entered behind a bookcase, a wardrobe, or a panel that reads as wall. Often it's leftover volume, the dead space under a stair landing or behind a chimney breast, which is why it cost barely more than framing an ordinary closet. Built for valuables, used for people, and the knowledge of it stayed inside one family for generations, passed down as a piece of household information as plain as which floorboard creaks. Open plans and measured, appraised, listed square footage finished them off. A room that doesn't appear on a floor plan is a room that doesn't appraise. Renovators still break through and find one, dust undisturbed for a lifetime, sometimes with a chair in it. And now the strangest documented case in this whole category, because it takes the hidden room and turns it inside out. The Winchester Mystery House in San Jose, California. Sarah Winchester, widow of William Wirt Winchester and heir to a rifle fortune, bought an 8-room farmhouse in 1886 and had carpenters working on it, by most accounts, for decades until her death in 1922. The result is a house with something like 160 rooms, 40 bedrooms, 47 fireplaces, roughly 10,000 window panes, staircases that rise into ceilings, and doors that open onto a straight drop to the garden below. There are said to be around 2,000 doors in the place, and 47 chimneys and stairwells, and a switchboard and elevators, because she had money and no reason to stop. The popular story says spirits. The documented, boring, verifiable story is that a wealthy woman with no architect built continuously, by improvisation, through the 1906 San Francisco earthquake which collapsed part of the structure, and by the accounts of the estate, left her briefly trapped in the Daisy bedroom. She had that damaged front section sealed off, and the 7-story tower that came down was never rebuilt. So the most famous strange house in America is, functionally, a catalog of what happens when a home has hundreds of openings and no plan connecting them. Doors to nowhere, stairs to nothing, A woman trapped in her own bedroom in a house with 2,000 doors. That's the lesson buried in the ghost story, and it's the opposite of what you'd expect from this list. More doors is not the point. Known doors are the point. A trap door nobody has opened in 20 years, under a bookcase, with a rusted hinge and a rug and a dresser on top of it, saves no one. Neither does a rope ladder still in its box with the price tag on, in the closet of a room nobody sleeps in. The families who survived because of a rope ladder or a floor hatch survived, because somebody had lifted that hatch on an ordinary Tuesday, checked the ladder, told the children where it was, and made the knowledge as routine as knowing where the flour is kept. Number 6. The row house attic crossover. In a block of connected city houses, the attics were frequently framed as one continuous run under a shared roof, separated only by a low knee wall or a small door in the party wall. Neighbors could pass from one attic to the next along the entire row. It looks reckless now, and honestly it was, because fire travels a shared attic like a fuse. But it also meant that if your own stair was gone, you went up, went across, and came down through the house next door onto the street. A whole block could evacuate along the roof line. The doors were left there on purpose, an unwritten agreement between families. Codes eventually required party walls continuous from foundation to roof deck, and they were right to. What we lost with it was the idea that the people next door were part of your escape plan. Here's the second pattern break, and it's the uncomfortable one. We are less prepared in our homes today than our great-grandparents were, and we're less prepared precisely because we feel safer. The systems are real. Response times, hydrants, alarms, all genuine improvements that save thousands of lives a year. But they let us stop thinking. They let us build a bedroom with one door and one path to it and never notice. Now the economics, because that's what actually drove every removal on this list. Nobody sat down and decided America should be less safe. Somebody sat down with a spreadsheet. Second staircase eats roughly 80 to 120 square feet of floor per level, and it does that on both floors. In a 1,200 square foot house, you're spending nearly a sixth of your sellable area on something the buyer can't photograph. A bulkhead door means excavation, a poured or block stairwell, waterproofing, a steel unit, and a permanent hole in the thermal envelope. A roof hatch is a penetration, and every penetration is a warranty argument waiting to happen. Post-war, when builders were putting up whole subdivisions at speed, every one of those items was a line to be cut, and once one builder cut it, the rest had to match the price or lose the sale. That's what changes inside the cheap version, not the marble on the island. The redundancy. It goes in the parts you can't see on a walkthrough, and it goes because redundancy is the only thing in a house that costs money and does nothing until the worst day. Number 5. Porch skirting in the crawl space. The lattice or boards closing the gap under a raised porch kept animals out, and behind them was a low-shadowed space that in most families had a removable panel somewhere, opening under the house and out the far side. Children knew every inch of it. Cool dirt, striped light through the lattice, a way out at the other end. A few dollars of lattice in 1930, and the panel that opened was family knowledge, not public knowledge. Slab-on-grade construction ended all of it. Number 4. The fallout shelter. In the early Cold War, the federal government pushed this hard. The Office of Civil Defense ran a national fallout shelter survey and marking program from 1961 onward, and those black and yellow trefoil signs went up on schools, courthouses, and church basements across the country. President Kennedy's July 1961 address urged Americans toward shelter. Popular magazines and government pamphlets like Family Fallout Shelter published plans a homeowner could build. A basic backyard or basement shelter ran a few $100s in 1961, serious money against a median household income under $6,000. Plenty of families built them anyway, then used them as storm shelters and root cellars, and eventually as places to keep paint cans. That's the honest history. Most were forgotten inside a decade. But the instinct behind them is exactly the same instinct as the root cellar. A home should contain a hardened place to retreat to when outside is not survivable. Number 3. The cellar to outbuilding tunnel. On some farms, a short passage connected the house cellar to the barn or a nearby building, dug so animals could be fed in deep snow without crossing the yard. It also happened to be a route away from the house, underground, invisible from outside. Digging one by hand was brutal and expensive, which is why they were rare and quietly prized. Every so often somebody renovating an old farmhouse breaks into a bricked archway in the cellar wall that leads to nothing anyone alive remembers. Third pattern break, and then the top two. Notice who these features were actually for. Not the strong young adult who can kick out a screen and hang from a sill. The child, the grandmother, the person with a bad hip and a walker by the bed. Every hatch was low enough for small hands. Every rope ladder was drilled until a 6-year-old could hook it. Every hidden room was reachable by a mother with a baby on her hip. The whole tradition was built around the weakest person in the house, because the weakest person is the one an escape route has to save. We design for the healthy adult now and call the rest an accommodation. They put the accommodation first. Number 2, the Underground Railroad hiding place. In homes along the northern routes before the Civil War, families built concealed rooms, false cellars and crawl spaces for a reason more serious than anything else on this list. They sheltered people escaping slavery, at enormous legal and personal risk, especially after the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 made assisting them a federal crime carrying fines and imprisonment. Real, documented sites survive, and you can visit them. John Rankin House above Ripley, Ohio, on its hill over the river, where a light in the window guided people across. The Levi Coffin House in Fountain City, Indiana, a brick federal home with a narrow space beneath the upstairs floorboards and an indoor well so the water use wouldn't look suspicious. Levi and Catherine Coffin are credited with assisting roughly 2,000 people. Harriet Tubman, who made repeated journeys south, and in her own account and those of her associates, never lost a passenger. The National Park Service now administers a Network to Freedom program with hundreds of verified sites. A trap door under a hearth, a false wall in a cellar, each one an escape feature in the truest sense, where the front door meant capture and the hidden space meant life. It belongs at number 2 because it tells you what all of this was always ultimately about. A home should be able to protect the person the world outside wants to harm. Number 1, the storm cellar. Across the plains and through the South, nearly every family had one. A room dug into the earth, often apart from the house, with a heavy angled door and steps down into the dark. When the sky went green and the sound started, you ran for it, pulled the door shut over your head, and the earth held while the house came apart above you. It cost a family their own labor and a few dollars of lumber for the door. Underground shelter remains, according to the National Weather Service and FEMA, the most reliable protection available in a violent tornado. FEMA publication P320 covers safe rooms for homes and small businesses, and the standard the industry works to is ICC 500. That's the modern paperwork on a hole in the ground people were digging in 1890. And here's why it earns number 1 on a channel like this. The storm cellar was never only a shelter, it was the pantry. Shelves of jars along the wall, potatoes in sand, onions braided overhead, cool and dark and steady year-round. The same room that saved lives on the worst afternoon of the decade fed the family through every ordinary winter. That's the strategy, and it's the whole point. So practically, store what you eat in the coolest, driest, darkest place you have, off the floor, off exterior concrete walls, and rotate it. The USDA and FDA are clear that on shelf-stable foods, dates like best buy are quality indicators, not safety deadlines, with infant formula the exception that carries a real use by. Commercially canned goods, according to USDA guidance, keep their quality about 2 to 5 years for low-acid items like green beans and meats, and roughly 12 to 18 months for high-acid items like tomatoes and citrus, because the acid works on the can lining. Heat is the enemy. Storage above roughly 85 degrees degrades canned food fast, which is exactly why an earth-sheltered room beat a garage shelf every single time. Discard any can that's bulging, leaking, badly rusted through, or that spurts when opened. Never taste to check. And store water where your shelter is, not where your kitchen is. 1 gallon per person per day, 2 weeks if you can manage it. A shelter you have to leave to eat isn't a shelter. Your great-grandmother knew that. That's why the jars were already down there. Here's my challenge to you this week. Walk into the room where you sleep and count the ways out, not the ways out of the house, out of that room. Then open the window all the way with one hand in the dark. If the count is 1, or if the window doesn't move, you're living the way we were sold, comfortable and quietly unprepared in a house our great-grandparents would have called a beautiful trap. Fixing it costs almost nothing. A working sash, a folding ladder in a box, a plan practiced twice a year with everyone in it. If this was useful, subscribe, because we do this every week with the same rules, documented sources, no invention. And tell me in the comments which of these your family still has or still remembers, and which subject you want us to take apart next, because these were never just features. They were a way of caring for people that we forgot how to build.